world, overcoming a Great Depression, 2 world wars, 9/11. Now we're facing an unseen enemy, unlike any we've experienced in our lifetime. And it's threatening our health, our economy, and our way of life. But every day, millions of courageous people across this nation have heeded the call. One by one, they brought us closer to reopening our society and our economy. And once again, we're seeing the power in the simple notion of we the people.
Hi, everybody. I am Malik Pancholi. I'm an actor, author, and activist, and I am proud to present to you a first ever event. Today, the Biden-Harris campaign celebrates immigrants who represent 14% of the total U.S. population, which is by itself huge. 40% of Latinos and 60% of AAPIs proudly call themselves immigrants. And that is why the AAPI Victory Fund and the Latino Victory Fund helped to organize this event. So, to begin with, the National Directors for AAPI and Latino Outreach at the Biden-Harris campaign, Amit Jani and Laura Jimenez, are going to welcome you to our program.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Immigrants, the Heart and Soul of America. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Laura Jimenez, Latino Engagement Director for the Biden for President campaign.
And I'm Amit Jani. I'm the National AAPI Director for the Biden campaign.
Thank you so much for being with us for this amazing program.
We're looking forward to the program. We have amazing guests with us today. We have Seema Sadanandan, who's our BFP Senior Advisor. We also have Meena Harris, former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, Vaneri Kang, as well as actor Malik Pancholi.
We have some great Latinos here showing up and representing for the team. We have Julie Chavez Rodriguez, our Deputy Campaign Manager. We've also got Julie Sarce, who's going to join us and tell her story, and many, many more, like Catalina Cruz, who will share with us their experience and why immigrants are so important to this country.
When we really talk about immigrants and why they are the heart and soul of America, that's something that's very personal to me as an immigrant myself. I immigrated from India at the age of 1 with my mother, who gave up everything that she had and everyone that she knew just to come to America and give me a better life for our family. So when we talk about immigrants and the contributions that they make, not only to small businesses, not only to healthcare, not only to the economy as a whole, we really are the heart and soul of America. We've kept the economy running. We've kept the country running during COVID, and we continue to do that.
That's right, Annette. And all of us share our stories. I myself am an immigrant from the Dominican Republic, and my mother came here with my 3 brothers when I was just a young girl. And thinking about not just the opportunities that this country has afforded to me and to my family, to my siblings, but also what we contribute. It's important that we celebrate the contributions that immigrants make every day to this country, and then we talk about how we will secure that opportunity for generations to come.
So thank you so much for being here with us today. We hope you enjoy the program. And please, please, please support us. Please support AAPIs for Biden by texting AAPI to 30330.
And join our Todos con Biden family by texting Todos, TODOS, to 30330. And we hope we enjoy the program. We're here to kick it off.
There are many stories of immigrants. And in my case, if it were not for the sacrifices of my parents, who came from India back in the late 1960s, I wouldn't be here. But how many of us remember that what made it possible was the Hart-Celler Act signed by President Johnson in October of 1965? That opened the door to non-European immigration, and look how it has enriched this country. So to begin our stories, here are Shekhar Narasimhan, chairman of the AAPI Victory Fund, and Natalie Reyes, president of the Latino Victory Fund. They will be followed by several other exciting speakers with some really great stories.
Such an important day in American history that people just have forgotten in the middle of all this vitriol. On October 3rd, 1965, Lyndon B. Johnson signed one of the most important, the first real Immigration Act. It's frankly the reason I'm even in this country. And so look back 55 years, You emigrated from Venezuela with your family at the age of 10. Tell us a little bit about your experience as an immigrant in this country. How did you overcome the challenges that you faced so that you are now a leading voice in the Latino community and you're doing this throughout your career?
Well, thank you, Shaker, for the question. And, my immigrant story is very similar to a lot of people's immigrant stories. My parents came here for a better opportunity. My father had a high school education, went up to 12th grade. My mother had 10th grade education. And for them, growing up in Venezuela, in Anaco, Venezuela, a small town, they kept saying, education, education, education. No one could take that away from you. And so we immigrated here. I was 9, actually, in 1984, for education, for that purpose exactly. And so, because they knew that education is one of the greatest equalizers. And so I graduated from UCLA undergrad and graduate and made my parents proud. And then led in that direction yet again in making my parents proud by entering government. Because we believe that, being part of the civic fabric of this country is yet another equalizer. If you participate in this democracy, if you're an active voice in this democracy, not only by voting, but by, being present and being that leader of your community, then we have an even better standing for our community. So, I learned English. I was talking to my boys yesterday. I said, at your age, imagine in 5th grade, I was learning English, the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. And I came from a small town. And so to Los Angeles, to this great city, great metropolis. And so it was not only, a shock of the language, it was a culture shock, but, immigrants, figure it out. And immigrants, become not only the fabric of this country, but the people that push this country forward. The people that are always working extra hours, always giving the best that they can in order to ensure that this country, our United States of America, the country that we've chosen to adopt as our own, is the best that it can be.
Mm-hmm. Great.
But, we're celebrating a historic milestone, Shaker, as you know, in American history. Senator Kamala Harris, what a proud moment it was when Vice President Biden named her as his choice. Not only is she the first Indian American, but the daughter of immigrants. So that's obviously very dear to our hearts. How do you envision Senator Harris' nomination factoring into the growing political power of AAPI and the immigrant communities?
So Natalie, what a great story. I always touch my heart when I say this because we have a saying that says that if you are committed to something, you put your mind, your heart, and your wallet behind it. So take this example of a person whose mother came from India to study, married, became active in the civil rights movement, had 2 daughters. Kamala is just this embodiment of this American dream, in my view. And so the moment that she was nominated was a very proud moment for the entire AAPI community. I think, frankly, for all immigrants everywhere, this is possible. When young girls look at her, they say, I could be that. So I think it's inspired us. But inspiration, as you and I know, is not enough. I tell all the young people, our sons and daughters, look, guys, if you are inspired, if you believe this is an important moment, if she represents what you believe America is and should be, get out there and vote, get active. Believe in not just her, but in the future for yourself. So inspirational, heartwarming. I just have to say this. Look, Joe Biden will not only make a great president, but he is a great person. He took this on to break this barrier for us. And I think this is the moment that we should step up and make this happen. I worry a lot though, because when you look at the vitriol on the other side, when you look at every action that has been taken around the issue of green cards, of legalization, of then, access to services as a green card holder. Every step on the ladder, impediments have been put by this administration. Donald Trump and the Republican Party have, for whatever reason, Natalie, chosen immigrants don't belong in America. For the first time, I worry for my children and their children's future. So what's at stake for the immigrant community in the United States in this election, as you think about Latinos and even more broadly?
In one word, everything. Everything is at stake. I mean, let's make no mistake about it. You said it very nicely, Shaker, that this administration has decided to demonize us, all of us, even our children. And so everything is at stake. For Venezuelans and other immigrant communities that are coming here, TPS, obviously, protection for temporary protection for Venezuelans and other communities. For the folks at the border that, make my heart bleed is, separations from their families. I mean, children living in cages is unacceptable. And obviously, for dreamers, is protection for dreamers. I mean, this is the bedrock of our community, of our society, of who we are as Americans. And Joe Biden gets it. Joe Biden gets it. And guess what? Kamala Harris gets it as well, as an immigrant, as an Indian American, her mother came here with all her dreams, her father as well from Jamaica, from the Caribbean. And so they see us, they hear us, and they will do something about it in the first 100 days. And so, I'm tired to explain to my children why, Donald Trump is saying what he's saying. It's unacceptable. We're living in fear. We're living in a society that we no longer understand, because this is not what America was made for, and by who. So, immigrants have strengthened our communities and will continue to strengthen our communities. And as I said, Joe Biden understands that, and so does Kamala Harris. So, make a plan to vote. Make a plan to vote. 3 options of voting: voting by mail, voting in person, or voting early. Please come out and vote. Please bring 10 people with you. Everything is riding on this election. As an immigrant, Shaker, who is leading our nation's top AAPI organization, congratulations for all the great work you guys are doing. Tell us about the moment in your life that made you decide to advocate for political power for the AAPI community. What message do you have for all of the immigrants who wish to get involved and be part of this electoral political process?
Well, Natalie, it was a very hard question until about 2 months ago, because I could think back and think of 100 different things. But all of a sudden, it came into focus. August 11th is the date that things changed in my life. August 11th, 2006. My son, who, by the way, had just returned from Spain, speaks Spanish fluently, and could be easily mistaken for a Venezuelan or a Dominican for that matter. He was carrying a camera and tracking a Republican candidate named George Allen in Virginia. And he got called a name that was a racist name. And underlying it was, this is 2006, you don't belong in this country. You shouldn't be here. Why are you here? He heard this, and he was 20 years old. And it ended up with the defeat of this candidate by a Democrat, and the Democrats taking control of the Senate, because all people of faith and belief in America on that day woke up and said, we got to go out and vote. We cannot afford this to exist in our nation. And yet we got a president who obviously not just believes this, but much worse. And yet on August 11, 2020, Joe Biden picked Kamala Harris to be his vice presidential nominee. And I can't tell you, beyond my heart bursting, it just occurred to me later when others pointed out, this is the day that this happened 14 years ago. And look at how things can change, not have changed. Just to simplify it, only 4% of nurses in the United States today are Filipino descent, AAPIs. And yet almost 1/3 of them, of nurses who have died, are Filipino. I know the Latino community is hurting. I know that our communities that didn't have much or were on the front lines are hurting. Only Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have empathy. They express it in word, deed, sound, action. And for example, you said we must do a lot in the first 100 days. We must. We must protect those children of those that are aging out in the green card process that that Donald Trump has extended out indefinitely to years and years. We must protect those in this country so they can enjoy the quality of life, pay taxes, and become Americans. If we don't do this now, we may not get another chance. So there's never been a better moment for all of us to wake up, stand up, be counted, and vote. And as an immigrant and as someone who's proud to lead the AAPI Victory Fund and to do this with you at the Latino Victory Fund, I say to all our brothers and sisters, get up, get going, and let's make this happen and let's change America for the better. Thank you. And such a pleasure to work with you, and we hope to win this election together.
Well, together we're going to win this election indeed, Shaker. It is these coalitions that will ensure a Biden-Harris White House. So thank you.
Because what I will share with you is when I was confirmed to be Surgeon General, a confirmation that was by no ways assured, that was incredibly difficult, and that would not have happened had it not been for the support of this community, of the Indian American community, and friends like Shaker and friends like Mirai. And that moment when I was finally confirmed and was ready to be sworn in, the person who stepped up to swear me in was actually Vice President Biden. It wasn't something he had to do. In fact, it wasn't even a routine, but he did it. And I will always remember what he did at that swearing in before it started, when the cameras were off in the back room behind the stage. I was gathered there with my mother and my father and my sister, my wife Alice, but also with my grandmother, who I was fortunate to still have with me and is still here about 15 feet away from me here in the house today. And she was in a wheelchair. And when the vice president walked in, he immediately saw her and he went straight up to her and he got down on the floor on one knee and he took her hand in his hand and he looked into her eyes and he said, "Grandma, look at what you've done." And he pointed to all the people who had assembled there. And what he knew is he knew our story. He knew that our story in the Indian American community was very similar to that of many other immigrants, where our parents and the generations before us made extraordinary sacrifices for us to come here. And I know that whatever jump I make in my life, from where I started to where I end up, it will never equal the leap that my parents made and the sacrifices that they and my grandparents made. And I related that story to him a couple of years ago. I said, "Sir, do you remember saying that to my grandmother?" And he said, "Yes, Vivek, I remember that, but you forgot the other thing I told her." He said, "I also told her, thank you for choosing us. Thank you for choosing the United States as a place to entrust your family with, to make your home." And that was such a beautiful sentiment, but I remember it often because it reflects who he is. His recognition and appreciation for immigrants and for communities like ours is forming an incredibly important part of the backbone of the United States of America. This is a moment for our country when leadership matters, when values matter, and when we go to the voting booth, as we think about how to build support for the candidate that will best reflect our vision and our hopes and our dreams. Let's lead with our values and let's vote for the person who understands us. And I believe in that election, this election, a candidate is Joe Biden.
How are you doing?
It's been quite a whirlwind week, but we are getting through it and pushing through it, and hopefully November is right around the corner.
Yeah, hopefully. And also I'm stressed out about that. We have, I guess it's 30 something days barely left till election day. So we are in the urgent moment, and it's been an urgent moment, but I think we're really feeling that urgency now. And I'm so grateful to get to spend some time with you today. So thank you for this opportunity. I just want to get right into asking you some questions. I'm so inspired by you and your candidacy and knowing that you made history, right, as the first Dreamer elected ever to the New York State Assembly. And if I'm not mistaken, you are also the third Dreamer elected nationally.
in U.S. history, which is kind of mind-boggling. We're still, on our first, seconds, and thirds in terms of history making. But how did your immigrant experience influence your decision to run for public office? And how has it felt to be the first and making history and bringing your immigrant experience into your running for office and holding elected office?
No, thank you for that question, Mina. First of all, that's a very cool sweater.
Thank you. I can get you one, right? We're electable. You vote for us.
Send me the link. I gotta support. I gotta make sure. Is this from the collection?
It's from my brand, Phenomenal. And it's very much about women and dreamers and folks who are underrepresented being electable when we vote for them. Who knew that that's how we become electable, right?
I love it. It's a brand new era where fashion and politics can become so intertwined that we now use it in this way. So fantastic. Right. I'd love to get one. Send me the link. So into the question that you asked, for me, it's been quite a whirlwind. I came from Colombia as an undocumented young person when I was 9 years old, and I spent 13 years as a dreamer. I was one of the lucky ones, and I was able to become permanent resident, a citizen, and a lawyer. And I spent career about 10 years doing public service as a litigator, working government, all these things that frankly, I had it in the back of my head somewhere that one day I would run. But as I'm sure, coming from the family that you come from, I was often told, it's not your turn yet, or you're not ready. And sometimes we as women of color, we doubt ourselves. We're working extremely hard, but we always ask, is it my time yet? Am I ready? And, one of the things that growing up undocumented did for me is it gave me this level of grit and this level of almost angry but loving fight for my own survival, that I transfer that into the survival of my community. And when the opportunity presented itself, I felt like I had no choice. It was right after, about a year after the 2016 election, I had this need to fight in a different way for my community. I represent a community where almost 60% of the people are from another country, and about 40% are non-citizens, undocumented, permanent residents, people with DACA. And I felt like a voice like mine, because of what I lived through, was very much needed at the table. And so I ran in 2018 and I won.
So, I think you also have, I'm sure, such a unique perspective on this. You're on the front lines of government, right, as an elected official, and hearing directly from your constituents, and are well aware of what is at stake in this election. But how are you thinking about that, and in particular around the immigrant community, and ways that you're seeing people show up? What's resonating with folks? Why are they? What is driving them to feel passionate about voting for this ticket? What are you seeing and hearing?
So a couple of things for the folks who are watching us. I happen to represent the epicenter of the coronavirus, which weirdly enough is actually a neighborhood called Corona in New York.
My God.
I know. It was destined. So one of the things that we're
my most saying, when is testing us, and it's just like stuff like that. It's like, are you kidding me? That's wild. Anyway, I know that. We know that Black and Brown communities in particular are getting hit the hardest. How are you dealing with it?
So, there's what we do as government officials, and there's what we do as community leaders who need to see a change. Right. The government official, one of the things that I was forced to do was turn my office into a food pantry, because I'm one of the few neighborhoods that had absolutely no food pantries. And we partner up with Chef Jose Andres' nonprofit, and have given out more than 200,000 meals since early March. And so for me, that's been what I get to do as a government official. How do I literally go on the front lines and help people survive this? Yeah. That gave me a view into how deep of a hole we're in as a country, where we have members of our community who have paid taxes for decades, and the minute something like this hit, we let them die, because that is in essence what happened. Yeah. And so what I get to do as a leader of our community is talk to people about the need for change and the importance of voting, and ensuring that they know that even if they don't have the right to vote because they might be permanent residents or refugees or even undocumented, they have a voice that deserves to be heard. And so they all know someone who can vote. Convince them to vote for the candidate that will be watching after your interests. And a lot of what I've done is make sure that I am engaging the community in that conversation, and that people understand that Latinos, that immigrants, we don't just care about immigration. Yes, it's important to our families, but we also want to make sure that we have good jobs, good paying jobs. We also want to make sure that we have healthcare, that we have affordable housing, that we have a president in the White House who respects our very existence. And so those are the issues that a lot of my neighbors care about. I also happen to represent the biggest community of trans Latinas in the country. Wow. And so for them, it's about the fact that there is a person sitting in the White House that has been consistently fighting to take their rights away. And so how do we fight against that? You sit on your couch, you pick up your phone, you do text banking, phone banking, emails, whatever you have to do under the circumstances to make sure that we get as many people to vote and to register to vote, and to do so in a way where their vote counts. Because what we don't want to see is all these shenanigans happening with the mail disrupt democracy. We're going to continue to fight, and we're going to make sure that the two people sitting on the White House are President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris.
Yes, yes. No, everything, I mean, you just said is so right. And it really drives home the point that there's so much at stake, but it's also some of the most basic things that are at stake and that are in peril, which is like, it's survival. It's literally like, that's what what we're trying to do right now is survive. It's basic human rights. Like, that's how low this has gotten, right? And I also love the point that you made about the immigrant community and not only caring about immigrant issues, like just like with the Black community, we don't only care about criminal justice. Yes, that's a huge issue that, you know, uniquely affects that community, but we're regular people like everyone else. And again, back to the basics, that we're just trying to survive. People are trying to keep their jobs. People are trying to eat and be able to feed their families. That is what is at stake. And you also said something that really resonated with me, which is that this is about a fight, right? Like, we have to fight back. I think a lot of folks are asking, you know, vote and then what? Vote for what, right? This is about taking control back of our, future, right? If it's left in someone else's hands, we already see what that looks like. It looks like the hell that we are living through right now.
What I would love to do, because I know we have to wrap up, is if I have to ask for three things from the people of our nation, and I don't want to say citizens, I want to say the people of our nation, because this goes for citizens who can vote and who cannot. What three things would you ask of them?
Gosh, vote. I mean, number one, vote. That is like the very least that any of us can do. Number two, use your voice. I think that's kind of a sub point of voting, right? Or I guess voting is a sub point of using your voice. But what I'm saying is talk to your friends and family, talk to your elected officials, and talk about what matters to you. Talk about what is affecting you. Talk about why you're voting, right? There's no one more influential than you in your own sphere of influence. And when you decide to use your voice, when you decide to speak up, when you decide to speak out, people notice, right? And when one of us does that, the next person does it. And then that's when, you know, you really are able to start movements and really, you know, affect positive change. And it matters so much. I guess that was not very brief, but, you know, vote, use your voice, vote, and keep showing up.
No, thank you, Mina. I'm just going to add one ask before we wrap up, and that's to the undecided voters. If anyone who is going to get to watch this has not yet decided who they're going to vote for, I ask that you close your eyes and you imagine what's happened over the last 3.5 years. And you ask yourself if you can take, if your family can take, if your loved ones can take, sometimes even if your worst enemy can take another 3.5 to 4 years of the exact same thing, and then decide what kind of country you want to see. And I can guarantee you that you're going to be making the choice for the Biden-Harris ticket. And so go out and register, vote, and make sure that we don't have to live through what we've lived through already.
Hola, soy Luisana. I'm Venezuelan and I came to this country 8 years ago. I am now a US citizen and I'm proud to cast my vote for Joe Biden this year. I'm voting for Joe because I saw how a country can lose democracy and I don't want to go through that again. I believe in democracy and I believe that we need to do everything that we can to preserve it. I'm calling my immigrant community to get out and vote this year because it's in our hands to protect the democracy of the United States.
Hi, it's so great to be with everyone today at the town hall, and I'm so excited to be able to join Seema, my colleague who's just been doing tremendous work on our policy team. Seema, how are you doing today?
Great. It's so exciting to be here with you, Julie. I've admired your work for so long, and it's just incredible to work with so many talented women on this team. So, yep, my name is Seema. I'm a senior policy advisor with the Biden campaign, and I primarily focus on racial equity, criminal justice, and policing.
Yeah, well, it's just so great. I mean, I think especially given what our country's going through right now, as we face multiple crises from COVID to the economic crisis to obviously, the ongoing racial injustice, there's just so much going on, and I can't think of a better team to be able to really put focus on what matters, what's important, and what's really our plan to be able to move our country forward.
Absolutely. And, there's just so much for our community in this particular moment, as you mentioned, our respective communities. I think that we see everything on the line, and so much of what we fought for over the years really coming to a head in and through this campaign. So it's an exciting moment and it's a huge opportunity. And I think that that's really just been the energy in the campaign and even around the country as we go around and talk to folks.
So I'm a deputy campaign manager for the Biden-Harris campaign. I first joined as a senior advisor a few months ago. And prior to that, had an opportunity to work with Kamala Harris. And so for me, it's so great to see what I consider the two families coming together and being able to be on the same ticket. Because as you mentioned, it really does kind of represent a tremendous opportunity that our country has right now. And, I think about just growing up, I had the opportunity to grow up in the farm worker movement. Both of my parents worked for the United Farm Workers as organizers. And so I had a chance to see people and be surrounded by people who believed in something bigger than themselves, who were committed to changing people's lives and believed in the power of organizing people to really improve conditions. And so, for me, that was just really, the spark that I needed to then be able to, find my path and figure out, what part of that journey I was going to take on and carry.
Thanks so much for that, Julian. Yeah, I saw my dad go through a lot of the same things that small business owners across the country went through. He applied for a PPP loan. And like so many small business owners across the country, the doors were just really shut. And you saw Donald Trump and his friends really jump to the head of the line. And so I know my family members' businesses have struggled just like people all across the country. And we're seeing the impacts of that now. And it's not just with the small business owners, but these small businesses are really the cornerstone of many of our communities. Not only do we provide services within our communities, but we also employ people of color in our communities across the country. And so as these small businesses are struggling, it's really painful to see the absence of that conversation in a meaningful way coming from our current president. And so that's why it was so exciting to me when I joined this campaign to really be able to dig in through the racial equity component of the Build Back Better plan about not only what is it that small businesses need in order to get back to baseline, but why were they struggling in the first place? What was the safety net in terms of access to capital, and how do we go about empowering the financial institutions that serve with fidelity small businesses? And so when we thought about racial equity within the campaign and in the policy team, we did the same kind of deep dive inquiry that we do on every policy issue. And this is one thing I love about working for this campaign, the rigor. We do not in the policy team just, come up with solutions that sound good. We really think through how's it going to work and how are we going to make sure from step A all the way to step Z that these reforms and these policies actually reach the communities that they're intended to serve. And so that's the kind of policy that you see coming out of the racial equity component of the Build Back Better plan. It's really about, in every aspect, in every type of institution that's designed to support the economies that exist within communities of color across the country. How do we support those economies? How do we support those businesses to get to where they were, but then to go beyond that? And, when we talk about jobs, we're talking about a Build Back Better infrastructure plan that will have an economic multiplier effect. So we're talking about opening the door to jobs. But what I can say, having spoken to communities across the country about this plan, is that it's not just about jobs, right? It's about entire industries, the potential, the innovation that exists in our communities it's just so incredible. And look at what we've been able to accomplish in just a few generations, or in some cases in several generations. Look at all that we've been able to accomplish with very little in terms of investment into our communities. And imagine who we can be and imagine what we can do when that investment becomes real for us. So it's a really important moment. The Build Back Better plan is looking at an investment in infrastructure in our communities that has never been made in history. Nothing like this has ever been done for our communities, and it has effectively reached our communities fully. And so we get to go through with community these visioning exercises about what we want our schools to look like. What does it mean not just to be not sick, but to be actually healthy? What kind of jobs do we want? What kind of careers do we want? How do we want to take care of our elders? What do we want to look like in moments of crisis and struggle? But also, what do we want to look like in moments of triumph? And so there's just so much to do. We hear this all the time. Winning this election is really, it's the floor. It's everything that we're going to do after it that's just so incredibly exciting in terms of building back our communities better than they ever were before. So an incredible moment to share this dialogue with people all around the country, especially in the moment where so many people, so many small businesses, so many families are just struggling because it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I consider it to be a really exciting thing to be able to go into these communities, share these plans and say, hang on, help is on the way. And we have a plan. So it's just been really great to hear the feedback from folks in spite of this moment that we're in.
Definitely. And I know one of the other areas that I'm really excited about, just I think given, how much terror, frankly, this administration has really, brought to our immigrant communities and immigrant brothers and sisters as a result of, what has been just, I think, atrocious and inhumane immigration policies and really gutting our legal immigration system. And so I know that, both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are really committed on day one to addressing some of these key issues, like reinstating DACA and making sure that folks do have the basic protections from deportation, are able to fully contribute to the country and to our communities, to be able to send an immigration reform bill to Congress, because we know we need real congressional reform in order to have a pathway to citizenship for the millions of undocumented folks, many of whom are working as essential workers and on the front lines in this pandemic, really giving them a pathway to citizenship. And also being able to address, the horrific issues like family separation that this administration, just new reports showing that the policy really was to inflict cruelty. There was no other means or no other outcome for the policy that this administration had other than to inflict cruelty in order to deter immigrants who are fleeing violence and persecution from coming to our borders. And so, again, there's so much work to be done, but, I remain super hopeful. And I think what we continue to see across the country, as folks are already voting in a number of our states, is that the momentum is building, that, folks are sick and tired. They're exhausted. They want this national nightmare to end, and that they really want to see leadership with character, with compassion, with a real, plan to be able to address the issues head on in our country. And so, I'm really excited about this final stretch in these last several weeks as we reach every voter possible to get out and vote.
Hello, my name is Vannery Kong. My family are refugees that escaped from Cambodia from the Khmer Rouge War in 1975, and they sought asylum in the United States and became citizens in 1981. As a daughter of a refugee, it's important to celebrate our rich background because it shows the value of human life, the resilience and the bravery that one would take, and the love for cultural preservation for future generations to experience. I support Vice President Joe Biden because I support a candidate who understands the value of human life. And as we progress forward to a more globalized world, we need a candidate who understands the value of bridging the gaps of the digital divide and providing access to resources, technology, education, job opportunities, and understanding how to protect these infrastructures as far as cybersecurity, as we're collectively working with our multilateral partners to progress forward to the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. My message to you all as we're thinking about who to vote for and who to endorse in this presidential election is look at your journey, look at all the lessons that you have learned and what message you are wanting to teach the future generation of leaders with this presidential election. Are you wanting to vote for the future and all the value that Vice President Biden can bring to this wonderful country and this world? Are you voting for the past? You decide. Thank you.
Hi, Katie. I am so excited that you are joining us today. You are such an icon in the Latino community. Many of us grew up watching you on TV. I remember sitting, watching the novelas, and it's just amazing to be able to chat with you today. Why are you using your massive platform to encourage Latinos to get engaged and vote for Joe Biden in this election cycle?
So first of all, I would like to say to you, my dear Ulisa, that I have followed your story, that I, without any intention of condescension, am very proud of you. I think that the country is very proud of you, as they should be. And I am honored to be talking with you today. Para mí es un honor, de verdad. This country, este país está hecho por inmigrantes. This country was built on immigrants. And this is a country whose history is continual and whose history continues to be strengthened and created by the immigrant promise, by the immigrant struggle, and by the strength of the immigrant. I consider myself to be an immigrant. Nací en Mexico. I was born in Mexico. My mother is American. My father, orgullosamente mexicano, Mexican. Que en paz descanse. May he rest in peace. And this is a country that at this time, I do believe this is the most important election in modern history. I've never seen anything like what we're going through as a people right now. We are in the middle of a pandemic that has taken far too much human life, and that has taken from us the possibility of being able to touch each other, of being able to hug each other. It is a very, very cruel pandemic. It is a very, very real pandemic. It's a pandemic and a virus whose science, the greatest scientists in the world are speaking to us about. And we have not felt the support from our leaders, from most of our leaders in the White House where this is concerned. Y es trágico. Es trágico para nuestra gente. So we have to look at that. We are in one of the greatest economic recessions in the history of the country. As a result, small businesses, 1 in 5, are gone. So let's look at our candidates. I think Joe Biden is a beautiful human being. He's a family man. He is a man that has spent 47 years of his life in public service. He seems like a lovely, caring guy who comes from a middle-class family and who understands the struggle of those of us who are not, born rich. We're not born with everything, but we have the American dream. And that's citizens who are born in this country to lower socioeconomic status, and those of us who immigrate here. We all deserve a chance. And the thing is, I have seen Joe Biden all of these years as vice president under the Obama administration. I mean, he's a lovely man, and he's an effective leader. He's an effective public servant. And I think that he's going to be absolutely fantastic. And because he understands the struggle of not having been born, with everything, every possible economic advantage, I think he's going to be there for us. I think he's going to give us all an opportunity to live out that American dream the best that he can. And Kamala Harris, she's the same wonderful type of human being, the daughter of immigrants, someone who understands the struggle of the immigrant, someone who understands the struggle of those of us who are middle class, lower middle class, lower socioeconomic class. She understands the struggle of the minority. And I think it's important that our government leaders understand that. That's not something that you can just, kind of step by. There's no way around that. And I think that we're seeing that in our history right now. I think that's clear, Great. So now I want to know, my dear, yo quiero saber, for many years, although you lived your entire life here, you were unable to vote, which I'm sure was very hard because we need to know that our voices are heard. And I'm sure that it was difficult not to know how to make your voice heard if you were unable to vote. What are you voting for this term, and why? Why Joe Biden?
So for many years, I was not able to vote. In 2016 was the first time that I cast a ballot in a presidential election. And I remember that morning being so excited to go cast my ballot because I thought, how amazing is it that the first time I can vote in a presidential election, we're going to make history and we're going to elect the first woman president ever in the United States. And of course, we all know that that's not how the story turned out. It was a very different outcome. And I was so heartbroken and so disappointed that someone like who we have as president now could be elected in this country. And yet I think I was even more inspired and had a bigger resolve to keep fighting for immigrants and to keep fighting for all of those people who cannot cast a ballot, whether that's people who have had felony convictions who are now out and can't vote, whether it's undocumented immigrants who still cannot vote, and making sure that now that I am able to vote, I became a citizen in 2014. And now that I do have the right to vote, I have made it my mission not only to vote for myself and for my future and for the future of my family, but to vote for all those people who still cannot cast a ballot and whose lives have been used as pawns to scare people. You know, immigrants are often used as scapegoats when in reality, immigrants are an asset to this country. Immigrants are the biggest believers in the American dream. That's why we leave our homes and we risk our lives to come to this country. We do it.
Immigrants are essential.
Exactly. Immigrants are essential. And we come here so that we can give a better life to our families. And in the process, we make this country better. And so I am voting this election for all of the immigrants who cannot vote, who cannot cast a ballot. And I am voting for Joe Biden because we have seen what this administration has done and how they've demonized immigrants. And I think that the policies that Joe Biden has set out and Kamala Harris have set out are a very good starting point. And we will continue to push for more progressive policies for immigrants in this country.
My dear, I believe that, that all immigrants are assets. All immigrants are essential in this country. I don't believe it. I know it. It's not a belief. It's the truth. This is a country that's built on immigrants, and that's just the facts. And we are to be celebrated because of that. We're an important part of this process. But I just want to tell you that those of us who speak louder for others, there is tremendous power in that. And so congratulations on that, because you are dedicating your life. You are on the right side of history. So I just want to thank you for this time with me. It's an honor and a pleasure. And I feel very lucky to be able to cyber meet you and talk to you. And I hope someday, very soon, under a compassionate, caring administration that is concerned about science and that believes the science, I'll be able to give you a hug.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Katie. I really appreciate the time that we've shared together. And you're absolutely correct that we need to celebrate immigrants, because immigrants are essential, from the farm worker who's picking up the food we eat, to the EMT who are saving lives, to the doctors, to the teachers who are DACA recipients. Immigrants are an essential part of every single area in this country. And so I encourage everybody to vote, and vote because there are millions of immigrants who cannot cast a ballot today. Thank you.
I got goosebumps listening to Vivek Murthy, Meena Harris, Catalina Cruz, Seema Sadanandan, Julie Chavez Rodriguez, Vannery Kong, Katie Barberi, and Julissa Arce. What diversity and what talent. One more note. If it weren't for the civil rights movement, it is quite likely that non-European immigration would have remained a trickle. We owe a debt of gratitude to our African-American friends for their struggles that have made so much possible for the AAPI and Latino communities. To close out our storytelling, we now have Raymond Kuo and a special message from Senator Kamala Harris telling us why immigrants are personal and important to her.
Hello, I'm a proud American. I love this country because it is founded on ideals of democracy, that the people take responsibility and peacefully decide their future together. My parents, they immigrated to the United States from an autocracy. Growing up, they shared stories with my sister and me of family and friends who were blacklisted, driven into exile, prevented from returning to their homes for decades. My parents fought for democracy in Taiwan, inspired by the American example. Now I support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris because this time, our democracy is under attack. The Republican Party has worked to suppress votes for minorities and naturalized citizens for decades. Joe and Kamala will protect that fundamental American right. Donald Trump is openly calling for election intimidation. Joe and Kamala respect our democratic process. And Trump refuses to hand over power peacefully. My parents, they saw how that story ends. 38 years of martial law, what's still called the White Terror in Taiwan. As immigrants, we strengthen our democracy. And this election, it's our biggest test yet. So vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to keep our United States an indispensable democratic nation.
Everyone, thank you all for joining this event in celebration of the immigrants who make our country stronger. And thank you for all you are doing to elect Joe and me. Together, we will turn the page on this difficult chapter in American history. 55 years ago, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed into law the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, which lifted the quotas on immigration from countries all over the world. This legislation opened America's doors to the ingenuity and ambitions of millions of people. It started a wave of job-creating businesses that fortified America's role as a global superpower, and it literally changed the face of America. As I've said before, immigrants make our country stronger. My mother came here from India at 19 years old to pursue her dream of curing cancer. And it was at the University of California, Berkeley, where she met my father, who had come from Jamaica to study economics. Like so many of you, or the immigrants in your life, my mother rolled up her sleeves and worked hard to excel in her career and help raise my sister and me. My mother believed in the American dream, and every generation of Americans refreshes and redeems that dream. This November, we have the opportunity to build a better future and to make the American dream achievable for all. Thank you to the Asian American Pacific Islander Victory Fund and to the Latino Victory Fund for standing with Joe Biden and me in what is the most important election of our lifetime. Thank you for fighting for the soul of our nation.
Wow, that was a rousing ending by our next vice president. Immigrants are important. You are important. But we can only change things if we vote. So please make a plan to vote and exercise that right and vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for the soul of America. Thank you all for being here.